On this fine and beautiful night, it is true that egregores and animal spirits are having their way with humanity. They are coursing across the face of this planet in an ever-increasing intensity. But it's really important to stay oriented. It's really a critical thing that we keep our bearings and our orientations, and that we don't let ourselves become subjected to the caprices of either the animal spirits or the egregores. Egregores, of course, are spiritual entities that are not beings, and they are everywhere. And of course, the animal spirits are the spirits of those humans who have given themselves over to the beast. And they no longer aspire to their own divinity, but they revel in their bestiality. Even so, all of these factors, it's really important to stay oriented. It's really important to keep our bearings, to hold our course, and to understand who we are and where we are. And one of the things that has helped me enormously is some of the writings of David Litwa, who has done some work on some ancient traditions, and he's come up with 16 principles of the tradition called Hermeticism, which predates pretty much all of the things that we study and read. Hermeticism takes us back into the most distant pasts. And of his principles, the first one is very relevant right now. And that principle states, all religions are insufficient. There is always a source above God or gods. That is a beautiful thing to understand, because we are at the caprice of gods that we give names to and embrace and worship. And source is something far different than the gods that we come to know and love or fear. Source is the essence of all. It's where all comes from. And I'm not going to try and define source at this point, because I'll leave it up to you, to your poetic imagination and your scientific imagination to begin to connect with source. The essential part that I want to bring out is that source, in its desire to manifest itself, created entities to bring creation into being. And we have, in our limited understanding of such things, have deified those creators. And we have begun to worship them. And that has turned out to be something which is really important that we don't do. Worshipping things that are really not divine, even though they are creations of divinity. They are creations of source. They in and of themselves are not divine. So whether you talk about Baal or Ashvatar or Anu or Astarte, and there's thousands more that we could name, that I could name, but they are unimportant. What is important is understanding the distinction that's been created, and that distinction is with regard to Yeshua. And I think that the way that I understand Yeshua, Jesus, that is the most coherent, is to understand Yeshua as the Son of Man, or the Son of humankind. And that the deification of Jesus, of Yeshua, is something that I think humankind has tried to capture or overtake by deification. So it is an attempt, in a way, a lame way, to deify Jesus in order to capture him, to make him subject to worship, subject to our sacraments, subject to our adulations. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's really important to understand that we do not need intercessors. We are complete and free to engage with Source, to connect with Source, to find in Source our divinity and our eternity. That is where we are. There is no need for crazy religious stuff and all of the liturgical things that come with religion and religiosity. It's important to have our rituals, but those rituals are rituals which connect us to Source. And in that connection, we don't need priests. We don't need intercessors or intermediaries or anyone to tell us what Source is or what it means or where it's going and what is the course of the cosmos. Those are things which are available to us, and they have been available to me. And in my elemental experiences, I have felt the presence of Source in my life. And never once have I inclined toward understanding my experiences as coming from a deity or one that's proclaimed a deity. A lot of people have tried, and I've told my experiences to a lot of different kinds of people, and they have very quickly wanted me to exclaim that my experience was from a god. My response has been to be nonplussed. I don't know, I just never have been connected with that understanding. My understanding has been my connection was with Source. It has always been that way. I've never had a name or an identity or an image which has come across. I have had an intense feeling, intense emotions and sensations, an ecstatic experience. And that experience has kind of lifted my view to what I would consider to be above God. It was a direct connection with Source. And I have not necessarily managed it very well, but I have done my best to maintain a kind of authenticity to that experience. It hasn't made me necessarily a better person. It's made me more vulnerable in many, many ways. But it has given me a benchmark, a place to look back to understand what it is that has happened to me. And I have really tried to stay true to that, and I have not tried to characterize it in ways that are necessarily in my own coherence. I haven't tried to theologize it that much. I've just embraced the experience and stayed in the experience. And in the experience of Source, I felt an enormous comfort. And all of the things that have come along which have tried to persuade me to indulge in an excursion into religion have ended in failure. Because in the religious experience, which is, I think, a kind of flat experience for me in comparison to what I have experienced, it's not compelling. It doesn't, I mean, I've tried to get it. I have really tried to get it, particularly in the idea of community. It's been something that's been a real challenge. Because when I am in community, I feel really good. But when I try and understand what they're doing or try and explain what I'm doing, there's not much of a connection. It just doesn't seem to happen. And so from that experience, I've had to stand apart a little bit. And I've had to say, look, I've got to keep my own experience pure as much as I can, that my need to be with other people, although it's really strong in cases, and I really like some of the things that are going on, I really need to do my stuff. I need to create my rituals, and I need to create my understandings. And it has taken a long time because those kinds of experiences are not, well, they're not equally shared by all of us. So I began my journey with works by Valentin Tomberg and Margaret Barker, two really beautiful people, and Henry Corbin, my namesake, Henry. And I've included in those three a fourth, David Litwa, Litwa, a really fine and sincere man. And I really like his stuff. I like it because of the sincerity. He's not a pedantic scholar. He's an intensely interesting and sincere scholar. He's an earnest scholar. And when I look at his work, I find in it great beauty. And he has tried to bring that beauty out in the things that he has written. And I think they're works of his heart. So these 16 principles of Hermeticism are really glorious. I really like them. And they suit my temperament and they suit my experience. And I hope that you will have a look at David Litwa and have a look. Unfortunately, his books, because they're generated by an academic and university press, they're unfortunately very expensive. However, you can get in touch with some of his stuff, with some of his lectures that are shown on History Valley, that is hosted by Jacob Berman, who I really like, and it's a very unique and a little eccentric but delightfully wonderful podcast featuring lots of different authors and lots of different interesting things to say. But there are people who take their work very seriously, and I like that. And they're committed to their craft, and that makes me feel good. And I can listen with a more of an open mind and an open heart because I know that they don't have agendas as such. They have biases and based on their own experiences and their own career paths and their studies, which I certainly understand. But nevertheless, it makes the study incredibly interesting. So I would like you to, again, check out David Litwa's stuff. The title of the book that I'm referencing is called Hermeticism 2. I don't have it in front of me. Unfortunately, I wish I did. I hope I got the title right. But David Litwa is really a fine person. And I commend it to you to have a look and to find your orientation and to begin to step aside from some of the controversies created by the gods of this world and those who have named and tried to create gods to which we can worship and depend. And it is still, unfortunately, the creations of creatures who have tried to instill in their own fantasies and imaginations deity. And unfortunately, it doesn't really work. And it creates a lot of trouble and blood. Lots of blood. So I like to return to Source, to use Source as my orientation, and as much as I can, construct the rituals that make my life abundant and full. Amen.